Well, let's roll. Welcome once again to the show. Where I was gonna say we wait for XJ to wake up. From with his coffee, but we also it seems like a tradition that we wait for Rob for his thing to stop freezing. Today we will do something a little bit different. We're gonna do a short story, a crime short story. Mr. Sherlock Holmes himself, and the story that we'll be covering today is the Red-Headed League. Nikki, would you mind starting us off the show by a summary?
Yeah, pretty so pretty interesting stuff when it comes to novels and short stories as a whole. They have a very different feel depending on when they're written, and we've looked at stuff that are well, I would say a tiny bit more modern than the work of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. But you can definitely feel right at the beginning as you read the Red-Headed League that this is definitely created by someone who lived in a different era. Hey, Rob, are you back with us?
I'm
Still
just
here?
trying to press various buttons to try and get back to where I was.
sounds like a strategy.
What am I supposed to do?
Oops.
It's what I
Oh!
usually do.
Oh, you're back. Are you back with us, Rob?
We can see you more fantastically, Rob. I don't know if you can see us.
Maybe he
hear us.
doesn't hear us.
I don't know.
Okay, where were we?
Rob, right. So, the Red-Headed League is, I think, the second story ever written regarding Sherlock Holmes, from what I understand. And there's something very evocative about the way he's portrayed. Surprisingly, I saw a lot of the times where he acted very, how do I put it in the nicest way possible. Well, he doesn't always come off as this gentleman. Like there's like several moments where you're just like, this guy is like pretty eccentric, isn't he? Like there's a moment where he doesn't explain his plan to Watson at all, and they're just like riding in a carriage, and for 30 minutes the guy sings the tunes that he heard last night. I would kill him. I'd be like, can you please stop it? We're like, if you don't want to say anything, just say nothing. Stop like making this racket.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
That's my opinion.
Rob is still not with us.
No.
No.
I'm here now.
Oh,
can you hear us?
You're with us now? Hello, Rob.
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that every now and again you freeze.
So do you.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a two-way street. When we freeze for you, you freeze for us, basically.
It's perhaps
Professor Moriarty. It's Professor
Moriarty is not in the story, good sir.
Yeah, it's a dastardly plot by Moriarty. Yeah.
So basically, one thing I want to say before I actually tell you what happens in the story. If you're a viewer and you've never read the story, you should read the story and then listen to this, because to me, the enjoyment of a Sherlock Holmes story and anything written in the same genre of a detective story is the mystery and it being solved in front of you. In my opinion, in any good story that has a detective element, the mystery itself is just as interesting as any other narrative parts of the of the situation. In fact, it has to be at least one of the primary focuses of a detective story. Otherwise, it's just it's an adventure book in that case. If the story itself is not interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good call, Nikki, because this is just one big spoiler.
Yeah, indeed.
Can I just say, I agree with what Nikki said, except that you got to distinguish between the first time you read the story and subsequent readings, when, of course, you do know the outline of the mystery, even if you forget some of the details.
Hmm.
But it's still reading and reading, and that's the interesting thing. The knowing the mystery doesn't spoil the story at all for subsequent readings, because the emotion of the mystery remains. Even though you know the answer to it, you can still share in the characters' emotions in a sort of dramatic irony. You know, I know what it's all about, but they don't, so I'm following
Right.
them.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point. And it's something that you will get to enjoy more and more as you read something from Arthur Conan Doyle, because he does very particularly create situations where when you reread it, you'll get to see more and more of the of the situation, and you'll get to discover more of the clues that you might have like missed. Or even get the enjoyment from simply just seeing everything from Sherlock Holmes' perspective. Feel as smart as he is, because really, like, all of the stuff that he does is basically supernatural, like to the point where it seems obvious at the end, but then when you're just seeing it, it just seems like random stuff. Like, my favorite part of the story is, by the way, switch off if you do want to experience it without like knowing what's going on. My favorite part is when he walks around this passageway, this alleyway, and he keeps hitting the his stick up the up the curb, up the pavement, up the stones, and he doesn't explain anything. Like, he doesn't tell Watson why he's doing it in the moment. And Watson's just like, this man he's had too much to drink or something. Like, I don't understand what. Can you stop making this racket, right? Like, he doesn't get it. And there's several times where I think maybe this is just me reading a bit too much into it, but he has a lot of sort of like ways that he portrays himself in the world, which at first seem like he just seems like super strange and antisocial creep. But then when you look at what he does, these everything has like a motivation. He gets, like, every time that he does something, later you figure out that it was all done on purpose, and it wasn't him just being strange. It was very precisely sort of like done.
I will
Like when he
I will butt in here though and say that rereading this short story, it's very clear to me also that Mr. Sherlock Holmes is a man of theater.
yeah, he does his reveal very well. Yeah, that's true.
He does
Uh,
like his dramatic gestures, shall we say.
But long story short, if you want the summary of it, so Sherlock Holmes is visited by his good friend Dr. Watson. And I had a big problem as a kid to distinguish the fact that Dr. Watson and Mr. Wilson was two different people. I don't know why, but when I was reading this as a kid, for me that was just like, both have W's, and
And
they're
W,
introduced
two
in the scene.
letters, and son, something like that, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and they're introduced both in the same scene. So as a kid, this was like torture. Like, I didn't understand which one was speaking when and who's who. So then I was very confused when the client, who I thought was Dr. Watson, went with Sherlock Holmes, and then like his assistant Mr. Wilson stayed. So, but anyway, aside my confusion, Mr. Wilson is given something that everybody in the current world wants and will never have, which is a stupid easy job that gets paid like 5 times the price of what you're supposed to be getting, right? And the reason he's apparently selected for it is because of his hair, right? So immediately it's like, it's a bit silly. It starts in a strange way. It doesn't try to explain to you that this is going to get serious, right? It presents facts very, very openly in this fashion. So supposedly there was a nobleman who loved the color of the red hair, a very particular red hair, very, very, like, it has to be very red, apparently. And he liked them so much that he has created the Red-Headed League, and anyone who can join as long as you have the parameters. And it's very specific. Now, later in the story, you find out that, well, this scam was literally created for Mr. Wilson, it seems to be, right? Because the people wanted him out of the house. So they selected one feature from him that they decided was like pretty easy to sort of like justify that he should be part of the scam and so forth. And they gave him a ridiculous amount of money in order to basically not be at his at his post for several hours every day, so that they could dig a tunnel. And so Sherlock Holmes brilliantly through the course of the story, without telling anyone what he's doing, sort of like figures all this out, gets the Scotland Yard on the situation, catches all the bad guys, and then explain to Watson how easy it was all, right? Like, and I think what's great about the story is, at least to me, one of the great things that really caught my attention is the fact that the silliest of elements of the story are very unapologetic. You have this sort of situation currently where everyone who's writing, they want to write like everything is super serious and everyone is like there's high stakes and it's very like blockbuster, like everything is exploding, blah blah blah. But there's something very beautiful about a story that begins in a very silly manner, and then progresses to be more and more interesting because it becomes more and more cerebral, right? So, and then you even forget about the silly idea that it all started because like a guy was selected because of his hair, supposedly. Now again, he wasn't really like actually selected for his hair. This was all a scam, right? So I think it's a one of the best introductory stories of Sherlock Holmes, because it has all the elements. It has the silliness, it has the great reveal, it has the cool backstory to the people that are being hunted, and a great resolution. That's the Red-Headed League.
Yes.
And also, interestingly, you could class it as one of those stories written over a century ago, which would still work more or less nowadays. It's a scam. It's a story about a scam, and it's not one of this great multitude of stories which would be ruined if everybody in it had a smartphone. The plot would still work even if everyone was given smartphones. So that's quite good. Whereas there's a lot of stories, like, for example, the novel The Go-Between by L.P. Hartley, about a boy taking messages between a man and a woman and getting involved with them. Obviously, if they had smartphones, there'd be no need for any of that. And that's true with lots of stories. But there's something eternal about
freezing. Something eternal about freezing. Hey Rob, can you just repeat the last bit because you froze out there?
Well, something eternal about these Sherlock Holmes stories. The rest of them, they could work in just about any age.
Yeah, what I felt upon rereading the Red-Headed League is so a few things struck me right off the bat, and that is, as Nikki has pointed out, the redhead legacy thing set up by this supposedly very rich nobleman. That does sound extremely ridiculous. I don't think anyone in modern times would have fallen for it. Maybe if we rework the scam to some kind of Nigerian prince relative scam, that would work.
I was about to say, like, people fall for the stupidest things. Like,
Maybe.
there's a scam which is basically like, I am Nelson Mandela's wife and I have all this money, and it's like it's the most popular scam because she's a known person. So people, you will find pretty stupid people. So I think this would work. No
Fair,
matter
fair enough.
what they-
Fair enough. I would say though, I think I meant that more as a story device. Like when I was reading this, it does, contrary to what Rob has said, I actually do feel that the plot setup is very dated.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, in a crime novel context, like it feels a little bit forced. But I also was thinking, like, back in the time that he wrote it, which is what, in 1890, around that time.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That probably would have came off as being really fresh and groundbreaking. I think it feels dated because I've seen versions of this particular setup in many other crime mystery novels and animation and movies, etc. You know, it's basically a heist. It's like Ocean's 11 but flipped, or rather, Ocean's 11 flipped the people involved. So I think it didn't give me that very fresh, oh my god, this mystery is so amazing, had me on the edge of my pants and all that. But I suppose at the time when it was written, almost over 100 years back now, it would have been quite groundbreaking, especially the way Sherlock Holmes went around solving the mystery. And I'm wondering, did Agatha Christie come after Arthur Conan Doyle or before?
Oh, after
After.
several decades after. Yeah.
Yeah. Her stories were very much in a similar vein, but she focused a little bit more on psychology rather than physical evidence, I think.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
Well,
Yeah.
anyway, I was. Oops. Rob dropped out on my screen. What happened?
He's gone. He's like offline.
Oh.
And now
back.
he's back.
Maybe it's Moriarty's hand in all this after all.
Or it's maybe his poor UK internet.
Hello. Can you
Hello.
see me? Can you hear me?
I can't
We can
see
hear you, but we cannot see you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tragic loss. That.
Said in such a deadpan voice.
Tragic loss.
I
One
wonder
thing.
what Moriarty's first name is.
Moriarty's first
Oh,
name is.
Is it John? No, I have no idea.
Isn't it John Moriarty? I don't know.
We can do a quick search.
Anyway,
Yeah, I'm gonna
now
look
I
it up.
can see myself. I can see myself, but I can't see you.
Really?
We can see you.
Yeah. You can see me, can you?
Yeah, I can.
Well,
James Moriarty.
yes.
I think that's his name. His first name, James Moriarty. Okay.
Right. Yep, got it. Ah, here we are.
Oh, you're back. Wonderful. So I think just to quickly continue with what I wanted to say is there are some things that I really, even though it feels dated to me, there are some things that really work for me. So one, it is, I don't know, there's something about old English that is very soothing to read in.
Well, I think it's because people knew how to use the English language in those days. I mean, they didn't just use a kind of tiny part of it like they use now. They could actually, they must have been given a sort of season ticket which allowed them to use the entire English language, you know. Sherlock Holmes, for example, he says at one point, "It is introspective, and I want to introspect." He just is uh, so clever with his use of English, and ordinary people also, they speak without the aid of 4-letter words every sentence or so. They actually speak clearly, and interestingly, it's amazing.
Right, but you also gotta think about where this was published and for what kind of audience this was made for. This was made for the upper class.
Was
This
it?
is not made. I mean, for sure. Like you're
Middle
not
class.
going to put it this way. It is probably like a beautiful idea that everyone spoke this way in this time period, but it is most likely not so, especially when you look at most people who existed within the society and who had very different outlooks. So I mean, it's not like magically people became less what is it called, less educated or something, or less known.
Articulate. Yeah.
Yeah, let's. It's more like, all right. So within the, I think this is an effect that has happened in the past 30, 40 years. Where like people have looked at the at the back of history and kind of, you look at the way Romans are portrayed and they all like talk perfectly and so and so and so, and then you look at the 50s and the 60s and everyone is very heroic, like, or you look at the 70s and everyone is super relaxed and so and so and so, right? These are like capsules of time where people just look at something and they believe that this is the only way it was in this time period because that's the image that we have of it. But in reality, the only thing that changed is that with things like the internet, now we're hearing all the voices all the time, right? So I believe that if in the 70s you got to hear all the voices all the time and you didn't just look at the trends, it would look pretty similar to this kind of stuff. And I think that if like everyone wrote in the Sherlock Holmes era, you would pretty much have some people who would write with the four letters as you described them at every page. I don't think particularly people have become like less sophisticated. It's more of the fact that it was accepted more within the creation of these stories, that there should be a standard of how these people are speaking and the way they should speak. The same as censorship in the current era is kind of like way laxer than in other previous times.
You've actually lost me, Nikki. So first, were you what was the argument? You were saying, so Rob said,
I'm saying that like the the story, while fantastically written, I don't think it represents how people spoke.
right. So you don't think that the people spoke the way it is written here.
Some might, but not everyone, especially not most people.
So you
Yeah, the thing
you
is that
sorry, Rob, go
literature
ahead.
does reflect reality. I was saying literature does reflect reality to some extent due to market forces. Like if writers wrote too differently from how people spoke, their editors would tell them to modify it somewhat. So although Conan Doyle probably exaggerated the good speech of his characters, I don't think he exaggerated that much. I think it's still pretty obvious that there was a higher standard in those days of articulateness. Now, maybe, as you say, Nikki, people are just as sophisticated now, but these things come in waves. Sometimes sophistication is channeled into other areas, and I think at the moment it's channeled into other areas than speech.
Well, yeah, I don't have any problems believing that educated English folk back in the day spoke the way it is written in a Sherlock Holmes novel. I might have problems believing that every strata of society spoke the same way. But yeah, either way, getting back on tangent, I do really like the way the language is written, like the way people spoke, as portrayed in this short story, is just really soothing. It's very, it's very, it's like reading not really poetry, but just like really well constructed prose. Like people spoke deliberately and they were articulate, and the words they use are pieced together in a very beautiful way. Yeah.
With me still not believing that this is how people spoke, I will say that Arthur Conan Doyle has a fantastic penmanship here. The words he uses and the way he uses them are fantastic. And that can be said without it being reality for where he lived.
True. And also, a remarkable thing about the stories is that the setting is the hero as well as Sherlock Holmes himself.
He's gone. He's gone, and he will never be replaced.
Back there.
Sorry, Rob, you froze out for a moment, so perhaps you could grace us with repetition.
Yeah, I was saying that apart from Holmes and Watson, in a way, the setting is the hero of these stories. The London of that time, it's like a character in itself.
It's true. It's very true. It is the same feeling that I got when I read The Hunchback of Notre Dame, like the cathedral was given at least as much attention as any of the other characters, and London here is also described in a very colorful way.
But he doesn't go over the top like Charles Dickens does, who goes into it in wearisome detail. Conan Doyle just gives a few elegant sentences and you're there.
Yes, I wonder if it has something to do with.
So it's remarkable contrast.
Sorry, Rob, you froze again. Can you just repeat the last bit about Charles Dickens?
Dickens kind of overwhelms the reader with his descriptions of London, so it gets too much, whereas Doyle does it just right, very elegantly and effortless.
It's true. Sometimes less is more. Very often less is more. So, I covered language. What about you guys? What do you really like about the story?
I like Holmes's put downs where he says, for example, on the obvious facts that he has at some time done manual labor, that he takes snuff, that he is a Freemason, that he has been in China, and that he has done a considerable amount of writing lately, I can deduce nothing else.
I mean that's something that I mentioned when you were having some connection difficulties, Rob. Oh, he's gone.
It's gone again.
I shouldn't mention connection difficulties. It seems forbidden. But to continue on my point, Sherlock Holmes is a very, very, very elegant man who has the tongue of a viper. Like he definitely does a lot of very gracious but powerful summaries of people within the story, which are quite poisonous. Rob, you have muted yourself just in case if you try to talk. on. You
Rob,
are
you
muted.
muted yourself.
You have muted yourself in a way where we can no longer hear you. You need to find a button that looks like a microphone and click on it. Oh, here we go.
Yep, there we are. Phew.
Whew. Mystery solved.
Right.
Okay.
So, in why do you enjoy that, Rob? Why do you enjoy his
Put downs.
put downs? Yeah.
Oh wait, he's frozen again.
There might have to be some edits in this episode. Oh. Dead air. It's what happens when one of us is not here. You
Okay.
know, there is something there's something fascinating about the Red-Headed League as a story, in a sense that while being quite short, a lot happens. Like it feels.
Oh yes, the
feels like a
pacing.
lot of,
The pacing is really, really well done. We start off with an introduction and a short display of Sherlock Holmes' powers of deduction, which I think is it happens almost every story. Like every story starts off with Holmes. With a little showcase of Holmes' powers of deduction, and I think that has to do with the serialized nature of the way the short stories were first published, and we can see the legacy of that in television, serialized television, all the way down, and then it was. They went straight. There's very little fluff, like Nikki said. It just went straight into description of the mystery to start, and then Sherlock Holmes immediately started his thinking, and then they went down, investigate, and then the action was very straight to the point.
Yeah. The imagery is quite powerful in this story. The image of this red-headed league and all these red-headed people waiting,
Yeah.
crowded, it's unforgettable.
Sea of red.
I can't listen. I can't stress this enough, that the clever way that Arthur Conan Doyle explained the mystery at the end, I think really shows you that that man was a criminal. I mean, like, look at him, like that's such an elaborate plot. No, I'm joking. But really, I mean, it's so well done. I could imagine that it's like based on a story that actually happened, because as silly as the idea of like being selected for your hair is, as previously stated, there are people who would definitely believe that, or choose to believe that, for the money that they were being given.
I mean,
the only issue that the guy has with the Red-Headed League is that they stopped his work. He's not like, I don't know what they did, like, this seems kind of mysterious. No, he's like, yeah, Mr. Holmes, so I'm not getting that like free money anymore, so can you figure out what happened?
Now that I think about it, I think the ridiculousness of the initial setup is a very good counterweight to how serious the actual crime actually is at the end, which is basically is a bank heist.
Very banal.
Of quite significant. Well, banal, really?
I mean,
the sum is quite significant.
A heist. No, I mean, like, in a way that every crime mystery has like a bank that is robbed. That's what I mean, right? And so, but Arthur Conan Doyle makes it interesting. He makes it something different.
True.
Because of the way you approach it. I'm not saying it's bad or anything. I'm just saying it's pretty standard for the genre.
Well, but as I said before, back in the day when this was written, it was probably quite new. Yeah.
Doyle became a real life detective in later life.
He did, didn't he?
He solved at least a couple of cases of where a man had been wrongly accused, and Doyle managed to solve the mystery, get him off.
Yes.
Probably like invented a cooler story than what the police had, and they were like, "Well, that's clearly what happened."
Yeah. I got to in your memory, putting this question to both of you, was there a detective character before Holmes, or was he like the first?
I mean,
there was Edgar Allan Poe's Auguste Dupin, which I haven't read. I've just heard of.
I don't know if Dupre was before this or after. I'm pretty sure there was some detective mysteries in Russia that I'm currently not remembering. But I don't think that Sherlock Holmes is the first detective or something like that. He's definitely the most famous detective. I don't think you can argue anything in that category. He is the guy that you think about when you think of a detective.
Fair enough.
Wilkie Collins as the Moonstone is a detective story. is a very good one also, and I think that probably predates Sherlock Holmes.
Why did you raise that question, actually?
I was just trying to remember if there were any detective characters written before Sherlock Holmes, and I can't think of any. But then I don't also pay a lot of attention to the history of this kind of stuff. So
I mean, once again, as you said at the beginning of our recounting of Sherlock Holmes, this is quite different to every other story we did. Every other story is sort of in the category of
science fiction or fantasy.
Science fiction or fantasy. Yeah, this is much more grounded in reality. I mean, you could argue that H.P. Lovecraft, his story began grounded in reality, but then it very quickly spiraled into insanity.
So for me though, crime and mystery has a very because the techniques you use for crime and mystery can be used in any form, in any genre, really. You could write a fantasy crime thing, and then you could use the same tools that a mystery novel writer would use to write if in fantasy or science fiction, like if they're trying to uncover a crime or uncover like a faction, a secret society, or anything like that. And there's a lot we can draw from the techniques that Conan Doyle uses in his writing.
Yeah, well, Isaac Asimov wrote some science fictional detective stories.
Yes.
And he discusses the ins and outs of that.
Yeah. There was a series that I particularly liked as a kid, the Lucky Star. I think that's the name of the main character.
Yeah.
Can't remember the series name though.
Well, it's just the Lucky Star series.
Lucky Star series. There we go. Yeah.
Coming back to Rob's point, I do think that Auguste Dupin was the first famous, quote unquote, detective in fiction, because he appeared in like 3 stories or something. I can't remember how many.
I know that his name is brought up by Watson, I think, to Sherlock Holmes. He mentions Auguste Dupin or something like that, and Holmes says more or less the man was an idiot. And anybody's an idiot compared to Sherlock Holmes.
I mean, Sherlock Holmes has been portrayed as this very reclusive and vicarious and what's it called, and rude man, like in current fiction. Like when you see like retellings of his story, a lot of the time they really sort of like hammer on the point that he's this antisocial. Well, I don't know how else to say it, but bastard. He tells everyone exactly what he thinks about them without really caring how they feel about it.
Well, he says it in a really well-mannered way, though.
Yeah, but it's still just because you stab me and say I'm sorry that it hurts, like doesn't mean you haven't stabbed me. Like,
although one thing I will note is that despite the mannerisms of how he interact with the people around him in the stories, he is at the end of it still a very noble character. He does show courage. He does know what he does have a strong sense of right and wrong, and he does do what is necessary when it comes to that.
Yeah. It's like the different criticisms you can make about James Bond. You can say, well, Bond is a serial womanizer, and he self-indulgent and all that. But a good chap to have on your side if you're in danger.
Yes,
And,
definitely. I'm not saying in a
risk his life for a friend or a woman.
Right.
He's not too careful of his own life.
I really
like Holmes's arrogance. I think it's so amusing. When he says about this policeman, he says he's not a bad fellow, although an absolute imbecile in his profession.
He's not a bad fellow, although he's an imbecile. Yeah, that's one of the times that he doesn't cover it with niceties, actually, right? But it's probably because the victim of his words is not there to hear him. But, I mean, I'm not trying to say he's bad or good. I'm just pointing out that when you think about it, the current portrayals of him in current fiction are not that far off to how he was even in the second story that was like written about him. He's not the nicest person if he doesn't believe that you are intelligent enough, right? And not in a I'm not trying to analyze it in a way where it's like, is he a good person, is he a bad person? It doesn't matter. He's entertaining, which is what you want from a character. He's an entertaining, fantastical person who, most people would dream to be, like, solving mysteries and being so intellectually sound that you could just, like, he sees the world differently. Who wouldn't want to be like that? Who wouldn't want to be exceptional?
Not me. Because he's... One thing there's many ways to describe Sherlock Holmes, but one word can capture everything. He's an obsessive, and I don't really want to do that.
I'm too interested in astronomy to want to be Sherlock Holmes. He says at one point that he doesn't.
Oops. Well, we'll get Rob to repeat that again. I don't think I want to be Holmes.
Wow. Well, I guess you have a much more interesting life than I do.
Oh, Nikki, come on, man.
I'm not. I'm saying, like, I would love to be Holmes any day. Like, I would love to sort of like experience what he probably gets to experience.
Oh, okay. So Rob, are you with us?
Yep, I'm with you. Yep.
Do you mind just repeating that last bit because you completely there he goes again.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah, I think it's in the a study in the Scarlet that Holmes says he doesn't care whether the Earth goes around the sun or around the moon. He just has so much information in his brain attic, and anything else has to get thrown out.
Yeah.
Right, because it doesn't help him solve mysteries, so why care where it goes? Yeah,
he's very obsessive, and I don't know if I can live like that, to be honest. However, there is one other thing I want to bring up before I forget, which is that you can see very clearly, like Watson and the local police as well as the Scotland Yard. All these people are foils to just show how smart Sherlock Holmes is. They sometimes Watson and the Scotland Yard and the local police are portrayed in almost comically inept fashion.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
Well, yeah, I mean, isn't that the point? Like they're showcasing that Sherlock Holmes is just superior to any other people in his profession. That's why we should be like following his trail, because he's just so far above whatever these professionals could do.
for sure, yeah, it's just the technique of writing that I'm bringing to attention. Yeah, just noting that.
Like he says, so about Jones, he's not a bad
Yes.
We gotta get him better internet or something.
Yeah.
So, in essence, Sherlock Holmes as a character is just as interesting as the story that we read. And although this may sound like blasphemy, because I love Conan stories, the first 2 or 3 Conan stories, Conan is not really a character. He's just a person. I mean, maybe okay, the first 2, like in the third one, he's pretty much like he has a personality. But when Rob, are you back with us?
No.
Kind of. So
Maybe Moriarty kidnapped you, Rob?
Yes, he's allowed me a few seconds of airtime.
I want you to hear this point I'm making, because I think it's something that that kind of calls back to our first episode. This story is interesting both because the plot is interesting and the character that we're seeing is very pronounced, although the story is quite short. Whereas, at least in the first 1 or 2 stories, Conan doesn't really have that much of a character, for example. Right, if we're looking back at something that is that we've done before, Conan is, I think, the only character in the previous ones where he's also serialized, just like as Sherlock Holmes, right? I think every other one didn't have the serialization built in, but yeah, Conan doesn't really have that much of a personality compared to Sherlock Holmes. He has like some ground on why he becomes who he is in later stories. But when you look, this is only the second story written, I think, by Arthur Conan Doyle in the Sherlock Holmes legacy. And I mean, I would just sit down and for half an hour see what this guy does throughout the day. Like he sounds like a crazy character.
And Doyle puts the reader, you identifies the reader with Dr. Watson, because he says, Watson says, I trust that I am not more dense than my neighbours, but I was always oppressed with a sense of my own stupidity in my dealings with Sherlock Holmes. And he says, here I had heard what he had heard, I had seen what he had seen, and yet from his words it was evident that he saw clearly not only what had happened, but what was about to happen. Well, to me, the whole business was still confused and grotesque. That just sums up what the
Goodbye, soldier. God.
Well,
right.
One.
Sure, Rob.
Yeah, I agree completely. Well, I think a final thing from me would be that a good mystery novel, how should I put this? Whatever clues, how the detective character solved the mystery, whatever clues are available for the detective to solve the mystery it must also be available to the reader to solve. I don't know if that makes sense. So
you're saying that it's like not impossible for you to understand, basically.
no. So
yeah.
So when crafting a mystery novel, I think the reader must be given a fair shake at solving the mystery himself or herself. And so whatever clues that's peppered in the story must also be the kind of clues that the reader can put together if they are paying attention when they read it. So in this case, aside from the fact that the character John Clay, is that his name, the criminal?
Yeah.
His background. Aside from that piece of information, which is available only to Sherlock Holmes, the character, it's not available to us as the reader. Aside from that, as well as the fact that the bank had recently, borrowed like quite a fair bit of money. Actually, now that I think about it, this story actually fails my criteria for a good mystery novel. Because one, we don't know that Mr. Wilson's home is close enough to a bank, which recently borrowed quite a bit of gold. We don't know that John Clay is a wanted criminal who had done a lot of who had staged a lot of daring crimes. We don't know that he and Holmes had run-ins before. So no, this story fails on that. The reader is not given a chance to solve the mystery.
All right. Well, Mr. Sir Conan Doyle, I hope you you can recover from being berated on our podcast.
Yes. Oh well.
Mm. Yeah, but we can get.
Yeah.
Was to get him out of the house, That was good.
What was good?
Yeah, what was good? You froze up.
I mean, he's being fair with the reader insofar as the reader ought to be able to guess that the purpose of the scam was the pawnbroker out of his house.
That's true. That's true.
That's the nub.
No, I mean,
that's pretty fair. Yeah.
I'm just gonna, I don't know. I think that while it's important to feel like you could solve it, that you get the feeling that if you follow the same steps as him, like that you're also a smart cookie and could have figured it out. I think the story more wins for me on how ridiculous the setup is and how incredibly mundane the resolution is, which is like the guy wanted to get money from a bank. I mean, like, how more of a basic crime could you get? But the eccentric, I think that's why also Sherlock Holmes likes this situation. He thinks this is stupid. I love this. Like, what a crazy plan to get this guy out of the house, right? And that's why he follows through.
Sherlock Holmes,
at least.
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes always claims he's suffering from boredom. Ennui,
Right.
he calls it. So yeah, but to your point, Rob, if we define the mystery of the novel as getting Wilson out of the house, then yes, I think the reader is given a fair shake on that. All right, we're coming up to an hour. Any other things you guys want to add?
If you didn't read the story and you're still listening to us, go read it anyway. I know you know how it ends, but still, it's a fun ride. And someone says imbecile in the story, so obviously it's a good story.
Any last words, Rob?
And there's 55 more stories where that came from as well. 55.
Oh, imbecile.
Stories.
Yeah, well, the Sherlock Holmes stories are very readable. Very readable.
That's what you want from a story, right?
I mean, they're page turners. They're page turners, man. And then
that's what you mean. Okay, I just imagined you like, I can't read this book, but I would recommend it.
Have you read anything by L. Ron Hubbard? Those are unreadable.
I am fortunately have been spared on that.
Yeah, I've been rather put.
Man, that Moriarty is a real.
It's really on the case. On Rob's case today. Well, unless we get him back in the next minute, I think we want to thank all the listeners and viewers of the podcast. We will most likely put the story down below in the in the about section so that you could also read it or reread it again. But we really hope that you enjoyed. Rob, are you here to make one final point, or are you not with us at the moment?
I'm here, but I can't see you chaps anymore. You've disappeared.
Your voice is all that matters.
Oh, right. Well, my final point is I think Professor Moriarty must have teamed up with Cthulhu.
Oh, God. I heard Professor Moriarty and Cthulhu somewhere in there, so I think we know what's happening in this house.
Maybe we are still not clear of Cthulhu's curse or something.
No. Well, here we are. Yeah, I was just saying I think they've teamed up.
Can you imagine? I think there actually is something like Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu or something like that as a
Is
story.
there a story? Okay.
I think so.
Wonderful. All right, man. I guess we will stop the recording here. The usual stuff. Comment in the comment section below if you agree or disagree with us, or if you just want to say hi. And we'll see you again pretty soon. Ciao.
Yeah, we've got to decide what we're talking about next time.
That's true. All right, man. Adios.